Hi everybody, this is Scott Stengel from Melco Applications, here to do another installment on small lettering, a topic that can never get enough attention. I'm going to give you sort of a brief synopsis of what matters the most and what you should check for. But I want to let you know that we've done another video, almost an hour long, covering all sorts of stuff with small lettering. So I encourage you to watch that. Where do you find it? We've shown this before. Go to the browser, go to melco-service.com, click on the videos tab, go to the Facebook Live episodes, use Control F as it says here. I type in my topic, in this case small lettering, and there I am. 2018, we did one. Here's on Facebook, and here is watchable on YouTube. So again, a lot more detail on small lettering than I'm going to cover today. I'm going to try and give you a quick and fast list of what to watch for, what steps to take to be successful with small lettering. Alright, let's start in. So a lot of times, so the 5 topics I'm going to cover are thread path, setting up the text, fabric consideration, garment preparation, and thread selection. Okay, so first of all, with the thread path, that can be very important for success or failure of a design. Quite common, I see where people set up a logo and then they put a name drop underneath at the end because they have to change it. Las Vegas, San Antonio, Sacramento, whatever. And so just makes sense, I guess, to put it at the end. Not a problem if it's on a knit shirt, but on hats we go bottom up, center out. If we sew this whole logo first on a hat and then follow up with the lettering, there's a good chance that there's a bubble created of fabric between this logo and the brim of the hat. So if we stitch the lettering first, we're on fresh fabric, hasn't been distorted by the logo at all or anything yet, and we're going to work from the bottom up and center out. So with this one, all I need to do is move the lettering to the first. This is when applicable. If it's on the top, you wouldn't want to do it first, right? We move bottom up. So while your order might come in for left chest only, they're going to like your embroidery so much, in 6 months they're going to come back and order hats. And then the logo's not set up for it. So if you consider this all around, make every logo you do kind of set up for hats, you're going to be much farther ahead when they do place the order. Center out lettering and all is just going to sew better on knit shirts too. So consider that. Alright, so setting up the text. Let me switch to some basic text. This is just a standard default text. I just changed the size to 1/4 inch. Basic block is our default alphabet. First of all, the amount of letters. So it's going to be up to us to work with the customer on excessive lettering and how to pull it off. A lot of times we can leave some of it off if they'll accept it. Sometimes it's a matter of moving part of the lettering to another part of the garment. I can do your logo and your tagline on the front of the hat, but let's move your web address to the back arch of the hat, or let's move your tagline to the side of the hat, the web address to the back, so I can fit whatever on the front. So get creative when it comes to something like that. A lot of times we would move web addresses on shirts to the sleeve because it would make it excessively large to try and fit all that, plus the logo and everything, on left chest. So you need to get creative on that. Next is the alphabet selection is important. So not all alphabets are made to go really small, but we have a category that is. So under the categories of alphabets, we have a micro section. These alphabets are designed specifically to work for small text. They look terrible large, but we make letters differently based on their size, and these are designed to go small. They're thickened up, which is a big consideration on how wide the strokes of the letter are, and they're also opened up. So in micro block, the R's opened up, the B, the A, the small e, stuff like that, to be more successful, because a lot of times alphabets are not meant to be so small, so they don't consider the letters closing up. So that's a first consideration, is the alphabet that you pick. However, this isn't a micro one, it's just a standard basic block, and we'll make it work. If I sewed this on a shirt, is it going to look very good? Probably not, because we need to do some property modifications in order to help it better succeed. Okay, we don't want to use TrueType fonts when possible on very teeny text. Those are generated by the computer. It's a print file. It's not done by a human. You're going to get the best results if you use either the micro or the starred alphabets and modify the properties to work. Okay, so generally a lot of the problems I see are people, they run the 1/4 inch letter text with the logo, they realize, oh man, this is way too wide for what I want to do, or the space I have. So they go in and either through properties and this letter width right here, they'll shrink it to something like 80%, or I've seen 70%. This is not going to work because it has shrunk the width of the strokes. The needle's 7.5 points wide. A millimeter is 10 points. We need to have at least a millimeter because it's a satin stitch and the needle needs to stitch left and right, let's say on a vertical satin, in order to work. Well, the less width that it is, it has no space to move left or right, so it pounds down the center, and that is not going to give good results. So rather than do minus letter width, let's just change the spacing. Let's move the letters closer together, and then that's going to allow us to use closest point connection, which is what I strongly agree that or recommend that you use. All right, so let's start with some properties. First point two I want to mention is the design checker. So this thing can help you out, right? If I have this as standard and I go into the design checker, you can see that it has no issues. As soon as I take and shrink this to 80%, now it's telling me that it's got column stitches that are under a millimeter or 10 points wide. So this is a good heads up, is have a look at the checker. If it flags it, chances are you need to change some properties. Okay, so we'll go back to 100% here. Our message goes away. All right, so let's cover a couple of properties that we want to adjust for better success. First of all, as I spoke, connection type, as digitized. If you're asking the machine to trim every single 1/4 inch letter, it's not going to come out as crisp as if the machine gets a rhythm and keeps on sewing. So it's going to add 5 stitches per letter, 3 tie-offs, 3 tie-ins, 2 tie-outs per letter, and that has a good chance of making a little dimple or some distortion, and so every letter has something like that. It's not going to appear as crisp. The machine also needs a rhythm, and so if I use closest point connection, it can get its rhythm going and it'll produce the best small letters possible. So we change the connection type to closest point. Also, center out is right here. We want to pick that. Now this is 2 lines of text. If we're doing this on a hat, we want to work bottom up. It's going to by default sew Denver then Colorado unless I choose this vertical stitch order. Now it sews center out Colorado, then center out Denver. We're working our way up the hat. So horizontal and vertical stitch order can be important. And then we want to go to top stitching. We have auto density selected. That's where it picks the right density based on the width of the satin stitch. This would work pretty good. I'm old-fashioned. I like to hardwire the density when I'm working on small text. I like 4.5, 4.2, 4.3. It kind of depends on the garment and the thickness of the font and stuff like that, but somewhere between 4.2 to 4.5 with normal 40 weight thread is going to give you good results. Too high a density, you'll start clogging the miters and all that kind of stuff, rounding things over that isn't going to look good. Okay, so I set the density. I move down to underlay. Auto underlay is selected by default. That works pretty good because it it bases the type of underlay on the width of the satin stitches. So if I would sew this, I would get center walk, as you can see there. The reason I uncheck it is 22 millimeters, 20 points is good for, 0.35, 0.5 inch letters. When it gets this small, I don't want the underlay to hang out because my top stitching is not that wide. So I'm going to just shorten this up to around 18 points. Hit apply. Next I'm going to move to compensation. Excuse me. I've said this a million times before. Pull offset is your friend. If we fatten up lettering, it's going to hold its shape on the fabric better. It's going to be crisper because thicker stitching will do better than very thin stitching. It will distort and wander all over the knit. So pull offset is your friend. So we want to try 1 point of pull offset. We lose about 10% of the width of the satins when we sew it on the fabric. So by fattening them up on screen, it might look thicker, but it's going to come out looking exactly the correct width that you're after on the fabric, which is all we care about. So pull offset your friend, we'll set that to 1 point. And then this one right here is important. This is a new feature for Design Shop 11 called lettering compensation. So if we look here, it looks pretty on screen, right? All the letters are the same height on the height and base lines. Terrific. When it sews out, this is not going to be the case. We always get shrinkage on the sides of the satin stitch, and it's going to have to push up on the top and the bottom to displace that movement. So it looks good on screen. I sew it out on the fabric. You've probably seen this where the N and the V in this case are taller, the A is taller, not just on the top but also on the bottom. The top of the L is going to be too tall. All we care about is what's on the fabric. So if it's distorted on the screen, that's probably a good thing because compensations have been added, adjusted so that it will look good on the fabric. So all I have to do is check this box. I highly encourage you to use this on block lettering jobs. It just really makes a difference. When I hit apply, notice the N and the V shrink. So now they're shorter, just by a little bit, but that little bit is just enough when it comes to small lettering. So lettering comp is going to help even the height and the baselines of the letters. And then the last one would be tie stitches. You don't have to do anything in here. By default, we use style 1. Style 1 adds the correct amount of lock stitches based on the width of the satin. So something very skinny like 1/4 inch text only needs 2 lock stitches, and that's what it's going to give you. So no adjustments need to really be made under tie stitches. Okay, the big one though is spacing here. These are too far apart for closest point connection. And the customer says, I don't like those little connector stitches between the letters. Push the letters closer together. So we can do it through horizontal spacing, or I like to use auto kern. So I'll check it and set it 12 to 15%, usually works great. Pulls them all closer so you're less to see the connection between the letters. All right. Enough about properties there. So sometimes if your 1/4 inch letters are isolated, they're not over a fill or anything like that, or sometimes on hats, I've had it where you have a straight line of text on the bottom and it just happens that, the letter L in the middle is right over the seam of the hat and it wants to just hide in the crevice. Also on terry cloth or polar fleece, even the best small letters are going to get sunk in. So one choice that I used to do is to add a fill behind the lettering. So very easy to do here. I would just grab the complex fill tool, the automatic shapes input, put a rectangle around this, and move it first, and change it to the color of the fabric. So this is going to add a lot of stability. It's going to be not so noticeable, and it's a good solution. You could put a border around it if you want, and that's easy. We've shown that before. But try something like this on super nap fabrics with small letters where they're just isolated on the fabric, and you'll get really good results. All right. Now you can see the letters are close. You're not going to see the threads. I've still achieved the right width that I want, and I'm going to have better quality when I sew out the finished product. All right, so the next topic is fabric consideration. You really need to consider how stretchy and stuff is. Forget about the nap. We're just talking about knits, and especially today, performance wear is so popular. That is elastic in all directions like crazy. So if that's the case, it's really not so much in the digitizing other than we're going to try and keep the stitches down to a minimum. The less stitches, the better the quality to a certain point. And so we're going to help that with the backings. So if it's performance wear, no show is a good choice, or cut performance is really incredible stuff. Madeira sells it. It's a woven fabric, has some starch that washes out, so it's soft on the skin for left chest and stuff like that. But it is a lot like adding, as I've said before, rebar in the concrete. It really tends to hold the letters in shape so they're not mushing around and looking sloppy. All right, so some of it's on the backing that we use. Sometimes also with performance wear, we want to use always the smallest hoop possible because it saves our costs, right? We have smaller amount of backing waste and all that kind of stuff. But if we use an adhesive, a spray adhesive for embroidery, not 3M products, but the spray adhesives on the back side of the performance wear, cut performance, and we stick that to the garment. Even sometimes when you use the smallest hoop possible on performance wear, you can get puckering and you can get loss of registration because it's creeping inside the hoop. What do? I've already picked the smallest hoop. That's where that adhesive comes in. A little touch of spray away from your machine onto the backing, and stick the backing to the inside of the performance wear will really, really make everything look nice and crisp. Okay. So a lot of times people want to just take recycled designs, like, yeah, the guy at the country club, he said they already had their design done, and so he emailed it over to us. Well, you find out that that was probably digitized for a sweater, and so we have to keep as many stitches off of performance wear as we can, and so that's a lot of time why recycled designs won't work, or they need to be modified in order to work. So this is wireframe, but to show you this, let's say that it's expanded. So if I have it as part of a whole logo and it's got way too much density in it, I can cut that out. If I go to properties, or I can just go to the scale tab from there too, but it's in both places. If I can change the density here by putting, 90, 80% of normal, it's going to cut the density down, and I would have better results on stretchy, lightweight fabrics than before. So the scale key is what you use if your design comes in and expanded. It's a lot easier in wireframe. That's why we encourage OFM native wireframe files when possible. But know that you can change the density of an expanded file through the scale key. Alrighty. So next thing that comes up is small needles. Yeah, small needles are going to do less damage to the fabric, and they're going to give you the best results. Time-wise, you don't always have to switch them out. 70 size needles will work really good for performance wear and for piqué and jersey and fabrics that are knit like that. So not always necessary, but a 65 needle is going to give you really, really good quality when possible. Also, we talked about the reinforcement of the backings on those fabrics. The last consideration is the thread type. There's 40 weight, which is what we commonly use, and there are finer weights available. So I encourage you to go buy a couple dollars spool of 60 weight polyester thread and play with it. A lot of times I've had success where the lettering is not as crisp, but just substituting 60 weight thread for the 40 weight is going to give you much, much better results, much crisper miters and things like that. 60 weight thread is really pretty cool. Just try it. You wouldn't believe how small you can get, below 3/16 of an inch letters with good clarity. Then there's also 75 weight thread, which is super, super thin. The 60 weight sews at 1,000 stitches a minute, so it's not like you have to really babysit or slow the machine way down to sew it. It sews just fine at 1,000 stitches a minute. 60 weight can give you a leg up on your competition. A lot of the large production houses are like, no, 40 weight's all we use. We're not going to take the time and labor to switch needles and switch threads and all that kind of stuff. If you're small, it can give you a leg up because, they're going, man, that guy's letters just always come out looking crisper. So try a couple dollar tube of 60 weight and just sub it in for some designs you've had trouble with in 40 and see if you have better results. I hope this helps you. It's been kind of a quick synopsis of what to set up, but hopefully you can adjust your properties, take into consideration some of what I've mentioned, and you'll get much better quality small letters. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.